Just to clear something up, medical providers are licensed at pregnancy care centers as well, and they are subject to medical malpractice laws, just as they would be an abortion clinic. There are licensed nurses.
Is there a question in there?
No, I'm disputing what you said. Do you dispute that they are not licensed and they are not subject to medical malpractice laws?
If they're working in a clinic and they are not licensed and they're not providing care, I mean, I believe if I recall from testimony in committee, there was testimony that there are volunteers who are there as well.
All medical professionals in both abortion and pregnancy centers are licensed and subject to medical malpractice laws. That's just the truth. And pregnancy centers are not licensed, and neither are abortion clinics. Abortion clinics are not licensed, but they are the providers are subject to both medical malpractice laws and actions on their license.
Actually, clinics are the providers within the healthcare clinics are licensed.
I agree with you. Abortion clinics are not licensed, and if there were any licensing involved, they were wiped away in the January reforms that you did to abortion clinic. Any kind of regulations were wiped away. So both abortion clinics and pregnancy centers are not per se licensed. They don't have inspectors examining them, but the providers do. So just to clear that up. And we would be happy, pregnancy centers would be happy to be licensed if they would have health inspectors. They would be happy to go through all the vigorous ethical and medical standards, just like an abortion clinic. But I just have another question. You know, when you have a Planned Parenthood center that does not provide abortions in the same town as a pregnancy center, and they both provide about the same services, are you saying in this bill that only the pregnancy center could be prosecuted under this law just because of their viewpoint on abortion?
No.
Okay, so the pregnancy center would not be under the subject of prosecution under this law?
I'll repeat it.
Okay.
This is not a First Amendment issue. There is no requirement of speech in your limited services pregnancy center. So, and I believe they're already covered by this act. Health centers are already covered.
So under this law, well, let's just say this. Currently, both abortion clinics and pregnancy centers can be prosecuted under the Consumer Fraud and Deceptive Business Practices Act, right?
Let's make sure we're using the same vernacular.
Okay.
You're referring to limited services. They do not provide a full gambit and access to full reproductive health care in the places that you're referring to. That's what's covered in Senate Bill 1909, yes.
Okay. If the Planned Parenthood in the same town, and there's many Planned Parenthoods that don't provide for abortions, and in that same town is a pregnancy center. They both offer about the same services: ultrasounds, pregnancy tests, STI testing. They both do not provide for abortion. That Planned Parenthood in that town does not provide for abortions. There's many Planned Parenthoods who don't. Under this law, only the pregnancy center can be prosecuted because of their viewpoint on abortion.
No.
Okay. I don't think I just don't think I'm conveying it. It may be my fault. So.
And just so we make sure we're clear, every Planned Parenthood in Illinois does provide full access to all reproductive choices, including abortion. I just want to make sure you had your facts straight. I just want to make sure you had your facts straight. Go ahead.
Okay, but they don't perform abortions at every
Yes, they do.
They do not. They do not.
They just texted me.
We'll just have to disagree, but not every Planned Parenthood. And that's fine. They all refer,
Yes,
but they don't all provide.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Facts are facts, yes, they do.
So we went over that there's no FOIA requests, there's been no complaints. So there's this new law. And I just wondered if this would apply to religious speech, as how churches and religious organizations are related with pregnancy centers and their speech in relation to the promotion or the referral to pregnancy centers.
No, it does not.
So there's no religious speech that would be limited in this bill.
No, as long as it's not deceptive, lying, and fraudulent.
So if they would say abortion is sin,
That would be the Attorney General's office to make that determination on a case-by-case basis.
So if they would say contraception is wrong,
The Attorney General's office would make that determination on a case-by-case basis.
so are we allowed to have from the Attorney General a document or some guidance of approved speech so that we can have some idea what would be considered wrong or lying?
The Attorney General's office will be making a determination on a case-by-case basis.
But after the investigation, this impounding of documents, the investigation that requires summons and subpoenas, the whole process and the whole effect of the state coming down on pregnancy centers, and then they'll know what they did wrong?
The Attorney General's office will be making a determination on a case-by-case basis.
So do you understand how this gives us no due process, and it doesn't give us any guidance on what we're saying, if it would be considered wrong or not, before we're punished for it?
Well, I noticed you said us. I find that to be quite interesting. But again, the Attorney General's office will be making a determination on a case-by-case basis.
To the bill.
To the bill.
Honestly, this bill, it's hard for me to understand why we need it, how it could be considered constitutional in any way. And her description, the sponsor's description of pregnancy care centers is nothing that I recognize. As I said, my wife and I have been heavily involved in pregnancy care centers, and we know them to be licensed providers providing medical control, ethical standards, caring, highly trained staff, helping pregnant ladies and their babies with support, compassion, options. They even provide things that are not provided by abortion clinics, like post-abortion care, post-abortion trauma care, maternal housing. My wife is involved in helping counsel when a woman gets a life-limiting diagnosis for her child or a miscarriage. So there's services offered. There's so many options and services offered. What I see from this is animus without evidence. I hear things like fake clinics, and they blatantly lie and hand out blatantly false material. We didn't see anything. We were never given any blatantly fraudulent material, but we were told that it's being passed out blatantly. And they only exist, I heard, to coerce patients and constantly lie, misinform, and deceive women. This is just not true. And I don't think anyone on our side or your side wants that to happen. We want to help pregnant ladies. Some of them are struggling, and they need help. They need the support of a pregnancy center. And I could work with you if you want to license pregnancy centers, if you want to look at the medical care they're getting, if you want to use the laws that are currently on the book. Let's stamp out those deceptive, those blatantly false materials. But we're not seeing that. This isn't a necessary bill. I mean, look, in medicine, and we were on the committee, we heard stories on both sides. We heard stories of ladies who also were they felt like they were deceived by abortion clinics. And we heard stories about people who thought they were misinformed by pregnancy centers. and stories are important. But what we do in medicine, and all three of us on the committee, we're healthcare providers. And I'm the chairman of the Department of Anesthesia. I have half a dozen complaints right now from patients who were they felt like they had bad medical care. They felt like they were misinformed. They felt like they were deceived in some way, or they weren't given enough information. And what I do with those are very important, but I have to have something in evidence in writing, and then I can give due process to the provider and to the patient. And sometimes we find out it was just because they were so scared, they were under so much stress. And in medicine, we have a new language and jargon that they don't, exactly get. And it was just a misunderstanding. But we have the evidence so that we can give due process. And there's none of that here. And then we look at, it's unfair. It's targeting just one viewpoint in this discussion. And it's viewpoint discrimination. And then you refuse to give any clarity or guidance to us and on what are we doing wrong? What's the misinformation? What's this material and this deception that's happening? I also have a problem with the wording of any aggrieved party can bring a complaint. So any party can not a patient, not a client, not a former patient, can bring a complaint. So Planned Parenthood of Chicago can rain down complaints as an aggrieved party on a pregnancy center in Peoria, Illinois. And that's allowed under this. And then we wait. We wait for the full effect and the full weight of the state, summons, subpoenas, impounding records, documents.
Can you bring your remarks to a close?
Okay.
We've got 10 other speakers.
All right. I know you have probably equal disdain for all pro-life people, but we deserve and need equal protection under this law. We deserve equal free speech, and we deserve due process. Some of the best ways to protect our rights under the Constitution is to fight for those rights for people you don't agree with. And I ask that you vote no on this bill, and I've asked that you protect our constitutional rights. Thank you.